Well, thank you so very much, and it's wonderful to be here, and I just love that we're bringing together artists and scholars and community leaders. It's really quite a privilege to be here. We heard yesterday and again today that today is the day for some discomfort. And so I'm going to ask everyone to turn inward a little bit into that discomfort, thinking about your own intergenerational trauma that you are living with, because each of us is living with that. And while I'm going to talk about the work that I do today, recognizing in the past few months, having all of my grandparents be from the Ukraine, that the war there is part of my legacy of intergenerational trauma. And we each have that. And I'm going to ask you again to focus inward on your own stories, your own trauma, and sit with the discomfort of that as hopefully we move from that through healing to flow. What do we mean by intergenerational trauma? Well, I think everybody here knows exactly what we mean. And it really has to do with when, as descendants of someone who experienced trauma before, we show some of the effects, the emotional effects, the behavioral effects, the interpersonal effects of what that person, our ancestor, or the communities we come from, experienced in terrifying, horrific situations. And just like those before us who were traumatized, we live with some of the legacy inside of us. That is intergenerational trauma. In the African American community, which is the community that I work with in Atlanta, Georgia, just a few blocks from the home of Reverend Martin Luther King, we know that for Black Americans, they were descended from enslaved people. And so the trauma that they live with is the trauma of slavery. And as structural racism persists and is really in full force right now in our country, it's not just the legacy or the history of that trauma, but how it gets perpetuated every day in small and large ways. And so the women that I work with have to cope with that intergenerational trauma as well as the ongoing trauma in their lives, the structural oppression and racism. Unfortunately, when that occurs, there's often a lot of difficulties that come with it. Think about your own trauma story. Think about your own intergenerational trauma. What kind of physical symptoms do you feel related to it? Do you have headaches? Do you have stomach aches? What kind of psychological problems do you bring to the table because of it? Has it affected your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself? We heard about helplessness yesterday and depression and post-traumatic stress. One of the very powerful presentations yesterday was a mother's story about the death of her son to suicide. All of the women in our project experienced racism and continue to, intergenerational trauma related to family violence, related to child abuse, child neglect, witnessing domestic violence, and being in an abusive relationship. And those combined intergenerational traumas made them feel so badly about themselves, so helpless, so hopeless, that they felt like the only way out was to attempt suicide or die by suicide. That's how they get into our program. And it is taking many women from basically the bottom of their lives and trying to build a community and building a community to move forward. And we know when there's so much trauma, we just heard about how hard it is to trust when we have trauma, how hard it is really to trust ourselves, to trust other people. And that trust makes relationships difficult, and so we end up reenacting that intergenerational trauma in our current relationships so that it keeps getting passed down generation to generation. And it's imperative that we stop that cycle. And then along with that cycle, the internalized oppression and racism that the women I work with experience. And so in the early 90s, we started a project called the NIA Project. NIA is a Kwanzaa word that stands for purpose. And I think a critical part of well-being is to find a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. We've worked with over 2,000 low-income African-American women, all of whom have a history of childhood maltreatment, domestic violence, and suicidal behavior, as well as the legacy of racism. People have talked here a lot about the different countries and cultures they come from, the different groups of people they work with at the individual level, at the community level. And we all know that the work we do must be culturally responsive, and that what works in one country or in one community is not going to be the same thing that works in another country or culture and community, and we're going to need to adapt it and do things from the ground up. And so the work that we do, really we strive to be sensitive to the historical effects of trauma, the family trauma, and the interpersonal traumas that have affected the lives of the women. We've heard so much today. We heard from our religious leaders today. We heard yesterday about belonging and how critical belonging is to our well-being. And so we've developed a group-based program because we think that working together as a group, as a community, builds a sense of belonging, and that is critical to the healing process. As was mentioned earlier, I was a professional ballet dancer. I still do my best to integrate the arts and psychology. Part of the group-based program that we do is an expressive arts program with art and theater and music and dance. And I must say I'm learning so much from the artists here about new things we can try and integrate into this program. In addition to that, we really believe that people sharing their narratives, their stories, is so important. So many people have lives of trauma that they weren't allowed to speak about. And so sharing our narratives, which people have been doing here, is key to the healing process. And we focus on making meaning. I've been really inspired by the little badges here that well-being inspires well-doing. And I think that what we try to do in our project is increase the well-being of the people that we work with, of the women in our program, through healing. And that in turn, they end up doing more well-doing. We think that empowering people, transforming their lives, helping them heal, enables them to do good. But it also means that in the process, we need to pay attention to our own well-being so that we can continue to do good. And so I'm talking about a program that focuses on individual well-being and community well-being in the face of intergenerational trauma. But we need to do such programs alongside of programs that build and strengthen family bonds and resilience. And as we've heard about so much here today, really promoting, and today, yesterday, throughout this time, promoting our communities to reduce violence in families, in couples, in communities, and the racism and oppression that people experience. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to see just a few words from one of the women in our program who, as she's gone through her own healing journey, has been doing good.
My great-great-grandfather purchased this property in 1882.
Donna Han McCoy's great-great-grandfather, Reuben Gay, had been raised a slave who used his freedom after the Civil War to prosper.
This is the second barn, and my dad helped build this barn. It was built in 1952.
Building this home in Fayette County and owning hundreds of acres of farmland. Generations of Gay's family, including Donna, now 60 years old, were raised here.
I just submitted to the Georgia State Preservation and the National Park, and this will be the first African American historical landmark in Fayette County, Georgia.
And his descendants still inhabit these hundreds of acres, many buried in the same cemetery just up the road where he was laid to rest.
This is his grave here.
Donna's passion for her family's history is part of how she has helped to heal her traumatic past, one in which she was kidnapped and raped as an adult, one in which she grew up in an alcoholic home she fled at just 15 years old.
So I ended up being one of those women that was on the streets. I was standing on the street corner down by the Fox Theater, and that's where it all began for me, trying to survive on my own, looking for love, because it wasn't at home. I have a safety list.
Donna tried to take her life 3 times. It was one of those times hospitalized at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta that she learned of the NIA Project.
It gave me life, and I took that, and I kept coming and kept coming. In the midst of, there was things happening along the way, but I just kept coming. When I started having flashbacks.
And so I'm hoping that as you reach now, focus inside, again, you can think about how you can move beyond that discomfort based on your own history of interpersonal or intergenerational trauma through the process of healing and continuing to do good in the world. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, man, that was great. So, I have a fabulous guest to introduce to you now. And I have to share the story with you. Before introducing a guest, I always talk to this guest, and because I want to know how they like to be presented. So I'll share with you the moment I met our next guest, and I asked, how would you like to be introduced? And the first thing she said to me was, I'm a mother. And I said, all right, cool. And I am a neuroscientist. But then she topped it by saying, and my job is to promote the alchemy to access the art within. So, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say anything else after this, except let's put our hands together to receive our next guest, Dr. Sará King.
Hi, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. So happy and honored to be here with you all today in this gorgeous community. I want to start out with one of my favorite quotes that I've been using in every presentation that I've given in the past couple of years. It's by Dr. Bayo Akamalafe, and he likes to say, times are urgent, let us slow down. I'm gonna say it one more time. Times are urgent, let us slow down. And so that is the spirit with which I am coming onto the stage. That is the spirit that I'm hoping to engender in our bodies today. So all of the speakers at this summit have been so beautiful in their courage. These times call for outrageous courage. Am I right? Outrageous courage. To meet fully with the grief and the pain, the trauma, individual trauma, collective trauma, and the intergenerational trauma that you just heard Dr. Nadine speak about. These times also call for us to connect with that which is sacred. And so with that, I bring the following image onto the screen. And I'm going to step out of my comfort zone right now because given everything that is happening in the world, I think it is necessary for me to do some modeling. I'm going to do something that I've never done before. And I'm going to sing in public. I have never done this in my entire life, but that is what these times call for, right? Before I do that, I'm going to say that what I'm offering up in the space today, I would like to invite you to take less as a presentation and more as an experience. We're going to have a collective experience with one another. So with that, I'm going to offer up some instructions, and these are completely optional. Any instructions that I offer are completely optional. But if you would like to follow along, please place one hand on your heart. I can see you kind of getting comfortable in your seats. Yes, one hand on your heart and the other on your belly. And as you're doing that, perhaps you're starting to feel a little bit more connected to the seat that you are in. And maybe now, start to feel the bottoms of your feet and notice if the right foot or the left foot or whichever part of your body is meeting with the earth is lighter or heavier than the other. Is the right side of your body or the left side of your body lighter or heavier than the other? And together, I'd like to invite us into an act of collective solidarity. And let us take 3 deep breaths together. And as you are taking these deep breaths, you may actually notice that there is a shift, a subtle shift in the sound of the silence in this room, in the way that you are connecting your body to the earth. And I'm going to start with this. I'm going to sing this phrase to you, and I'd like you to sing it back to me. You are beautiful. You are magical. You are beautiful. That's what you are. Sing it to me. You are beautiful. You are magical. You are beautiful. That's what you are. And now, we are beautiful. We are beautiful. We are beautiful. That's what we are. I am beautiful. I am magical. I am beautiful. That's what I am. And now noticing the quality of the silence in the room has shifted once again. I want to call for a loving revolution at the level of perception. There is something amiss in the way that we are perceiving ourselves, the way that we view our internal world. Something is amiss, and I want to propose that something is amiss at the level of our relationship to color. Think about it. We actually choose to treat people differently on the basis of the way that we perceive their color. And color is something that we all have such an intimate and profound relationship with. So in this space today, I'm hoping to experiment with shifting that. And I want to ask this question. What is the power that art has to move and transform us from the inside out, to connect us to the sacred? And so in this moment, I'd like you to think of a person, an animal, an object, or a place that brings you in touch with whatever the sacred is. Call them into the room with you right now. And if you need to close your eyes, you can do that. A person, animal, object, or place which brings you in touch with the sacred. Can you imagine that they have joined with us in this room today? Can you imagine that you can project them into the space of the art that you see behind me? And even now, you may notice again the quality of the sound of the silence in the room has shifted again. And so, let's experiment. Let's play. The artwork that you see behind me is by a phenomenal artist named Wangechi Mutu. Some of you may be familiar. And when you're looking at this art, I want you to take a moment and notice if there are any particular feelings or sensations or emotions that are coming into your body. Where is the eye being drawn towards? Is there anything in particular that is coming up in your memory in this moment? Some form of self-recognition that is being inspired. And you may ask yourself, what is it that I can do on a moment-to-moment basis to change the world when the suffering that we are facing collectively is so enormous? So this is what I want to suggest. Oh, and it doesn't want to let me suggest. Hang on. These are some of the primary components of the practice of embodied awareness, some of the tools that you can use at any moment in time in order to transform everything about your relationship with yourself and the world around you. Each of us as humans has been gifted the power of awareness. If you are alive, then you are aware. In any given moment, you can bring the power of your attention, your breath, your ability to concentrate on what is happening right in front of you. You can shift your posture and your alignment in order to show that you are fully present and engaged with the people around you. You can become curious, truly curious about the people who you are seeing, the places that you are encountering. You can deliver compassion for yourself and for others, noticing and recognizing the quality of the emotions that we have with one another, noticing when you feel present or absent, noticing the gift of relationality, of intentionality. And so with that, I want to say a little bit of something about how I use this in my professional world. I debuted at the Museum of Modern Art an event called The Art and Science of Hope and Justice with my colleagues Dr. Dan Siegel and Orlando Villarraga. And this debuted around the time of the Trump election in the United States when there was so much violence and vitriol. And we decided that what was needed at that time was an experience of diving deep into the art inside of our hearts so that we could discover how it is that as scientists coming together with artists and musicians, we can really reveal the capacity that the mind and the brain has to actively generate hope and justice that live nowhere else other than inside of the body. My next event with the Museum of Modern Art was art and awareness as a catalyst for collective healing. And why is this important? Museums around the world are deciding that they have to become active in becoming spaces to heal and reveal trauma, to offer critical services of well-being to the world. And so for those of you who are patrons of museums or perhaps who belong to a museum, I want to call on us now to really think hard about how museums can become future sites of healthcare for our society. So I'm going to skip over that last slide because I want to move directly into this final experience. Please cue the music. If you'd like to close the eyes, I invite you to close your eyes. Or if you're more comfortable, you can anchor into the artwork that is behind me. This is a piece of art by the artist Betty Sará. You may even vacillate between slowly opening the eyes and closing the eyes just to notice the experience. And let's place one hand on the heart and the other on the belly. And notice what begins to shift in this space. If your eyes are closed, you may notice certain colors arising in your internal experience. If you choose to open your eyes, you may notice an immediate shift as soon as you connect with the art. What is coming alive for you in this moment? Is there some aspect of yourself which you have neglected, which you now remember in the presence of this art? Shifting now to this artwork by Sam Gilliam. As you notice the difference in the colors on this canvas, is there some shift that you notice inside of you? Let's all take 2 more deep breaths and experiment with allowing the muscles of the belly to soften and relax. What do you notice? As you notice your inhales and your exhales, what dream may be burgeoning inside of you? So I want to end this experience with a suggestion. And the suggestion is this. We are beings who live at the nexus of our ancestors' dreams and the memories of our descendants. I'm going to say it one more time. We are beings who live at the nexus of our ancestors' dreams and the memories of our descendants. And so the next time that you see a color that provokes some deep memory or emotion inside of you, maybe in that color there is a message from your ancestors. There is a message from all of those in this world who are to come after us. And I hope you take that message inside of your body and you use it to inspire a whole new movement of healing for yourself and for everyone else on this planet. Thank you so much, everyone, for your practice.
Oh, look at that. Isn't life wonderful? Thank you for your practice. How did you guess I was going to practice some? Oh, wow. We have our next guest. And before our next guest comes on, I would love to see if you practiced what we practiced yesterday. You know, this little finger torture I introduced to you. So if you remember, okay, when the thumb comes up, the pinky comes out, and then we just switch, right? This is just a memorization so that the next exercise I'll teach you, will have you ready and warmed up. So, 1, 2, 3, go. Yes, exactly. How does it feel? Is it easier? Is it more difficult? Are you using your breath? Yes. And this afternoon, I'm going to teach you a really tricky one, okay? So, but now the next thing the brain loves, a round of applause for all of you and for our next guest, because it's so important that we keep the playfulness going. And to welcome our next guest, Hope Masaki.
How are you this morning? How are you this morning? We bring you the music of Zimbabwe. We hope this music, which we call Mbira music, soothes and heals your souls. We hope you are nourished thoroughly before you go for your tea break. Good music always heals. Oh, ndinongotendera nemasango she ndinongotendera nemasango naishewe tarira indatsungaira
Hope! Something, whatever your heart wishes, yes.
Well, then she got instruments. I don't know where our instruments are. Instruments. Oh.
This very lovely, fantabulous gentleman just kindly asked us to do another one. And because it's him, we're going to do another one.
Thank you so much.
Because playing mbira is a lot easier than this.
You do that with the notes and the voice, and that's beautiful, so.
The first song we played is called Wondo, and Wondo means war. It's a lament to the heavens or to whoever means the most to you, whoever your center is. Yeah, so as we look for solutions to how to live our lives the best, we also go back to our center and ask the questions and find solutions. This one is called Zvichaperarini. Which is a question, it's asking when shall it end? A lot of things that we ask, we don't know when they will end. But to those things that we have power to change, it's our duty to change them. Those we can't, we have to accept. Yes, Chaperarini. Zakatangariniko, Sinoperaniko. Zakatangariniko, Sinopedzwananiko. Zakatangariniko, Sinoperaniko, inde. Zakatangariniko, Sinoperaseiko, yeah. Oh, yo. Mbirimidzi yedzaenda. Nyambira uya waenda, oi. Mira uya waenda. Oyo yo yo. Sino pera riniko, sino petwaniko. Ayonde awo yo yo sichapera. Oyo ona sichapera riniko. Sino pera riniko, sino petwaniko. Oyo ndire ona sichapera sinopera neiko sinopedzwa naniko sinopera se sinopedzwa nani sinopera ne sinopera rin sinopera se sinopedzwa nani sinopera ne sinopera rin sinopera ne sinopedzwa naniko